moneyradio.com.
The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants. It's time for Health Futures with Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and it must be Friday. And indeed it is. It's a Friday in August. It is August 9th. And we are coming to the close of our summer, hopefully soon. It's a little sticky out, but, if you are just tuning into our show, we come at you live from the Scottsdale Air Park, from the Money Radio studios at 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and the World Wide Web, moneyradio1510.com. So our show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. We've been on the air now for 6 years. And what makes our show is our extraordinary guests, and today is no different. Today we're going to talk about a topic that is so important and near and dear to everyone that is out there, especially with our older adults, and that is falls and preventing falls. But I want to just get right to this. I've got an extraordinary guest here in the studio. Actually, I got three extraordinary guests in the studio. But the one here to my right is somebody that has done some phenomenal things here in our community and has created this entity called G60 Trauma. So I want to just get right on with it and introduce Dr. Alicia Mangrum. Welcome to the show, Alicia.
Well, thank you.
Are you okay with me calling you Alicia?
Please, absolutely.
Perfect. And just to my left and to Alicia's right is Delvin Grewal, and she is the behavioral health therapist and chief operating officer for G60 Trauma. Welcome to the show, Delvin.
Thank you, Bob.
And just to my left and to the right of Delvin is Scott Fischer. He's a return guest to the show, and he's kind of co-hosted with me today. Scott Fischer, he owns Options for Seniors. Welcome back to the show, Scott.
Good to see you, Bob.
Good to see you, too. So, Alicia, G60, cool name, and you do some phenomenal things here in the community. Talk to us a little bit about its origin and how this all came to be.
Oh, good. No, happy to do that. I like that you said G60, cool name, because it took a while to come up with this name, and just a little history. We started this back in 2008 when I lived in Dallas, Texas, before I moved here to Arizona, to Phoenix. And it was around that time in 2008, just for some background, I'm a trauma surgeon. I'm a general surgeon by trade, and then I did a specialty in surgical critical care, and then put the focus of most of my career on trauma, taking care of trauma patients. And trauma was really 10, 20 years ago. If you hear trauma, most people think of ER, gunshot wound or stab wound, or this horrible motorcycle collision or horrible motor vehicle collision, car wrecks, etc. And that's kind of what trauma was at that time. And so in 2008, we were starting to see this paradigm shift. More and more older people, not necessarily elderly, 80, 90, 100-year-old, but we were seeing older people who were falling. And at the time, again, that we called those isolated injuries. If you fell and maybe hit your head or fell and caught yourself by your wrist and had a wrist fracture, that was isolated. So you didn't need the trauma surgeon. You didn't need me. You just maybe needed an orthopedic surgeon or just simple ER visit. Maybe they put you in a splint and take you home. So the bottom line is G60 started in 2008 because we were seeing people who fell, and we weren't sure exactly who was going to take care of that patient. Should that patient be on the trauma service, or should that patient be on the hospitalist service, etc.? Well, we decided that we needed to be a little more aggressive in taking care of these patients with falls, even if it was an isolated injury. To the patient, they've had a traumatic injury. And so we said, well, let's create something where we have more focused and personalized care of people over 60 who've experienced a traumatic injury. And we didn't know what to call it. Do we call it geriatric trauma, specialized care? Do we call it, the elderly specialized care? And so G60 came from a friend of mine who kind of said, well, quit arguing. Let's just name it after a car, like BMW has an M50 or an M5 or whatever it was. And so we said, let's call it G60. And so that's how G60 sort of was birthed, if you will. And simple goal, just to optimize the recovery of people 60 and older, years of age, who've experienced a traumatic injury.
It's interesting, and I want everyone to know that if you want to learn about Alicia's company, G60 Trauma, you go to g60trauma.org, and everything you could ever want to know about Dr. Mangram and this group that she has put together is right there on the website. So this thing was started, really, it sounds like, in Dallas.
It was.
And what brought you here to the Valley of the Sun?
Basically, if I sum it up in one word, it was a surgeon. His name is Francisco Rodriguez. So he recruited me. Mm-hmm. He's been in private practice here for over 20 years. And they were having, they wanted to really revamp the trauma level 1 program at John C. Lincoln. And he worked at John C. Lincoln for many years. I had worked in Dallas at Methodist for about 8 or 9 years. And both of us had always been in private practice. Neither one of us had ever worked for anybody. And he kind of encouraged me, hey, if you come here, there's a lot of older people. You can carry on your G60 trauma program and you can grow it. You can help a hospital who has a level 1 trauma center, well established. John C. Lincoln had been a level 1 since 82, and they were the first to, I think, obtain the American College of Surgeons verification. And so that brought me here, and it's been great. We've grown tremendously, our company, and that's a separate company, and that's our private practice company, and it's called Valley Surgical Clinics, acute care surgical specialists. We do general surgery, trauma, surgical critical care. We have over 23 physicians and 8 or 9 nurse practitioners, and we just take care of patients.
And are you doing that inside the hospitals? Are you still doing it now? It's Honor Health. Are you doing it inside Honor Health? And I know you've expanded beyond Honor Health as well.
Yeah, absolutely. At Honor Health, so we started the first G60 program at John C. Lincoln, and then with the merger, when Lincoln merged with Scottsdale and became Honor Health just embraced the program. We continue to grow the geriatric trauma component, so we have G60 programs fully functional at North Mountain as well as Deer Valley.
Wow. When you talked about this, and when I met you June of last year, and you talked about trauma, and one of the descriptions you gave was some of the trauma that you're seeing today with older adults falling mimic and resemble some of the car crash traumas you saw back when you were training back in the 80s and 90s. I mean, and we're seeing more and more of this, are we not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's actually, to me, was very hard to even picture how could a patient fall and die. I mean, it just didn't make sense. I'm walking, I fell, and then the patient doesn't survive the trauma. It's the patients, the falls now are different. I mean, ground level falls are significant. We've seen ground level falls with the horrible head injuries. Some of it is attributed to the fact that they're on medications that make their blood thinner. We call them blood thinners, or these oral anticoagulants. Some of it's because they're moving fast. They fall off a curve, or maybe fall from some height, but not a major height. And we've seen significant rib fractures. We've seen significant pelvic fractures. Of course, the most common is the hip fractures. See a lot of falls with hip fractures, but even the hip fractures are becoming more and more complicated. Femur fractures, and to my surprise, when I got here, I didn't know there's a large golfing population.
Oh yeah,
and they drive these souped up golf carts, which is really surprising. The first time they said we have a golf cart injury coming in, and it was 78-year-old. I said, well, this looks like more of a motor vehicle collision. And then that's when I learned that we actually have golf carts with little engines in them. And so it was more than just your normal riding on some grass. They were like going down a street or on a freeway.
We're getting ready to finish the first segment. It's hard to believe time does fly, and we're going to cover a lot more material over the next 3. But one of the things that I learned about hip fractures, and I just wanted to get some validation from you. A lot of people think that people break their hips from the fall, but sometimes that fracture, that break, happens just because they misstepped and then they fell. Do you find that happening?
Well, the patients I see really broke their hip from the fall.
From the fall itself.
From the fall. But there are a number of people that have pathologic fractures, and those are fractures caused by something other than the trauma, and then the trauma just came along with that.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, very interesting. I wouldn't say cool, but it's hard to believe we're down one segment. Sounds like we got a little Joe Walsh shaking us out here.
Life's been good.
Life has been good. Thank you, Wes, for a little Joe Walsh taking us out. We're down one segment. I've got Dr. Alicia Mangrum in the studio. I got Delvin, Grewal, and I've got Scott Fischer. We're down one segment. Stick around. We got 3 more to go. You've been listening to Health Futures. We'll be right back.
Financial market analysis from Market Wrap host Mo Ansari.
Diversification is the key. You have to have diversification in these markets. And if you have all your eggs in one basket, when things go bad, you're going to get hurt.
It's financial food for thought on your drive home. Market Wrap with Mo Ansari.
Catch Market Wrap on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3 FM Monday through Friday at 5 p.m.
This Wednesday is the return from summer break. The JoeLoans.com show on Money Radio at 1:30. With the rate cut by the Fed and the turmoil in the markets, how does that affect your plans for a new home loan or a refinancing of an existing home mortgage? Joe Capitano, Senior Vice President with Homeowners Financial Group, will help give clarity to these questions and more. Tune in to Money Radio this Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. for the JoeLoans.com show with Joe Capitano.
You're in pain. Or at least you know something is off. But you just ignore it and hope it goes away. The hard part? Living with pain. The easy part? Making an appointment with us and finding relief.
Tired of being in pain? Tired of surgery after surgery or pill after pill? Now you can stop pain for good. ARP Wave, an innovative FDA-approved technology, delivers electrical waves to muscles, joints, ligaments, and tendons that promotes healing, speedy recovery from injury, surgery, and arthritis, eliminating chronic pain. ARP Wave is used by thousands of patients and athletes with a 95% success rate. This accelerated healing therapy is a permanent solution to your pain without drugs or surgery. Treatment is right here in Scottsdale. Eliminate pain and feel better after just one 30-minute treatment. Now get the first treatment for free. Go to ArizonaPainClinic.com. That's ArizonaPainClinic.com. Or call 602-524-9022. That's 602-524-9022.
At Farmers Insurance, the more you know, the better you can plan for what's ahead. Get smarter about your insurance at Farmers.com. That's Farmers.com.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Well, it's not Monday Night Football. It's not Thursday Night Football. It's not Sunday Night Football. It is Fridays here at Money Radio Studio, and it is Health Futures. But, Wes, I can't thank you enough for putting that on. It's football fever here in Arizona.
You're welcome. CBS Sports NFL theme for you, since our sister station, The Fanatic, is a CBS radio affiliate.
There you go. And
there we go. Got to stick to it.
And the nice thing about it is the Cardinals played last night.
Did you see Kyler Murray? Didn't everybody watch that game?
Well, yeah. And you know, the thing that most impressed me about him was that quick release. I mean, they've been talking about it, but that guy can get rid of the football fast.
On target, with touch.
It looks like Russell Wilson.
Hopefully better.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm ready for some football.
We've got some evening of the score with Seattle to do.
I know Alicia's a fan, right?
Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, I'm from Dallas. I think we mentioned that.
All right, we mentioned that, so we'll go back and talk about G60.
Okay.
No,
right.
one of the things that I wanted to talk about before we really jump into it, because I want to get into some of the stats. The stats are daunting, but you do some work not only with the Honor Health Group, but you've taken this concept of G60 and you've laid it in over at Abrazo, right?
Absolutely.
Tell me what's going on with that.
Yeah. No, so Abrazo, they recently opened, probably about 3-4 years now, a level 1 out in West Valley, a place when you think of trauma, you think about needs assessment. Where do we need another trauma center?
Right.
There's a lot of places I don't think we necessarily need one, but we definitely needed one in West Valley, we're at Abrazo, West Valley. So they have a level 1 trauma center. They've really embraced the G60 concept. We've implemented the program there, which is awesome. There's also another hospital, which isn't a level 1, but it's called Scottsdale Abrazo, and it's right off the 51.
Sure.
In an area where there's a
used to be Paradise Valley.
Used to be Paradise Valley, absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
But again, an area that has a lot of people that are over the age of 60. Mm-hmm. So they see a lot of falls. A lot of orthopedic procedures are done there. But there is also a level 3 trauma center. So that population of trauma is growing as well. And so the Abrazo system, again, like Honor Health, very forward-thinking, very futuristic, and they're currently now, we're helping them with a trauma center out in Tucson, another place where there's a huge need. There's only been that one level 1 banner, and Tucson Fire has for years and years expressed strong interest in the fact that there needs to be another trauma center, and they really welcome the geriatric program, and we want to see that grow out there, and they've been huge supporters. So
interesting. I mean, for me, I want to delve into the demographics. Delvin, I'm using your name, Delvin.
Yes,
we're delving in. Okay, so we're jumping in, and
right.
And the numbers are just staggering. I mean, when you really think about it, 2/3 of our planet's population that has ever lived to the age of 65 is alive today.
That's right.
The largest growing demographic in our country right now is the 90-plus demographic, and the number of 80-year-olds between the years of 2016 and 2030 are doubling in our country.
Yes.
These numbers are staggering. And in Arizona, by 2030, we're going to have more people 65 and older than we are going to have 18 and younger, and that'll be a first as well. So we are really struggling, and we're struggling as it relates to caregiving too, because there are not enough caregivers, just from a census standpoint, to care for the number of people that are aging. So we've got a problem, and we've got a solution with G60, but at the same time, we need to think about what are some of the other solutions to prevent some of these traumas that are going on. Correct?
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, you just nailed it. That the numbers are staggering, and we're just now starting to realize this is a huge problem. And 2010 we thought it might be a problem, but now we're almost at 2020, and by 2020. We're talking over 80 million people. In Phoenix alone, the number of people over 60 is expected to increase by 120%. And a lot of the data, you can go to the Department of Health and Human Services and just look at the data. And like you said, it breaks down this dramatic growth in 60 to 70-year-olds, 70 and 80-year-olds, 80 and 90-year-olds, and greater than 90. And like you said, the greater than 90 and the greater than 80 or higher than the 60 to 70. Right. So we're talking staggering numbers of people over 60, across the country, not just Phoenix, but Phoenix definitely stands out for sure. Yeah.
Right. Well, I had a health plan tell me that this is a great petri dish for them to test things out, because we are aging at about a 5-year or more clip ahead of other communities, because we have such an older population here.
Absolutely.
I write a column for the Jewish News and for Love and Life After 50, and I wrote a column just 2 months ago about the fact that we can't seem to get our government to address this. And none of the presidential candidates are talking about this aging crisis.
Right.
What they're talking about is healthcare, but healthcare is only a part of it. I mean, we talk about home modification. Right. Only about 2% of the homes that we have in our country are modified to be able to handle older adults.
Absolutely.
They have the stairs or ramps going up. The doors are wide enough. We need to start thinking about our population as a whole and how can we exist today and into the future. So you're doing some really interesting things. This interview was arranged by a friend of ours, collectively, because she's a friend of yours too, Jamie Fischer, who represents a number of different things that she does here in our community in terms of providing services. But one of them is she works with the Electronic Caregiver, and I know you're doing some pilots with them right now. I think it's with their Pro Health, right?
Absolutely.
And that's more on the remote monitoring? Is that what that is? Explain that a little bit to me.
So the company, Electronic Caregiver, they have 3 different products. There's Premier, Pro Health, and then there's Addison Care. And the way we got involved, it's really just exactly what you said. So the G60 trauma, since I started it back in 2008 to now, we're talking 11 years. Everything has been focused on in the hospital. How do we improve the care in the hospital? How do we provide aggressive care, get the patient to the operating room, do all these things? And we're doing a really good job in the hospitals. I think most trauma centers, everybody's starting to catch on. The big problem we're facing is now they're ready to go home. And we don't have enough caregivers, just like you said. We don't have, home health. There's not enough home health services. There's not enough, outpatient rehabs. And
you can see all the senior living places, the new builds all over town. If you go to the East Valley, there's 2 within 5 minutes here in Scottsdale that are being built right now, too. So as people are aging and can't go home, big business is investing in senior living all over the place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But they have the same trouble.
They can't find the caregivers either.
They can't find people.
And they'll need additional resources to help people prevent falls or to support people who may be at risk for falling in those facilities.
And Delvin, maybe you might want to address one of the things that we do. We do this biopsychosocial model within the hospital, and part of that is helping the patient get ready to go home. And I don't know, Delvin, maybe you want to just talk about that for a second?
Okay, so the biopsychosocial model, how we've incorporated that into the G60 trauma. We recognize that a lot of patients, when they come into the hospital, is because of a trauma-related injury, a fall, or a motor vehicle collision. But more than the medical component, there's the psychosocial aspect. A lot of our patients, they're retired, they have fixed funds. They may or may not have a caregiver to care for them. So for them to be successful when they get discharged from the hospital, it's not just meeting the medical aspect of it. It's ensuring that whatever they need to be successful in the psychosocial components are also met. So be it if they need resources, if they need, caregivers, affordable help, that we'll find a way to help them so that they can be successful when they get discharged and not return to the hospital.
I know we're winding down the first half, but I want to build on what you're talking about because, one of the challenges that we have is we have so many of our seniors, 1/3 right now, nationally, 65 and older, live home alone. And they're saying by 2030, that number is going to go up to as high as 50%. Right now in Washington, D.C., it's 48 or 49%. Atlanta, it's down like 47%. We're at halftime here, guys. Stick around. It's hard to believe. It flies by. You've been listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I've got the folks from G60 here in the studio. G60 Trauma. We'll be right back.
It's the bottom of the hour. We pause for a look at the world's news. Then we're back with Money Talk. We're Money Radio 1510 AM and 105.3 FM.
The suspect accused of murdering 22 people and wounding dozens of others in El Paso told police he was going after a specific group. Correspondent Ed Lavandeira is in El Paso.
Arrest warrant affidavit explicitly states that the gunman, 21-year-old Patrick Crucius, had confessed to investigators that he came here to El Paso to kill, quote, Mexicans.
President Trump, meanwhile, says Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is totally on board with expanding background checks in the wake of last weekend's massacres. The president says there's no need to reconvene lawmakers this month.
By the time you call them back, they're going to be back anyway. I don't think we'll need to call them back. I think we'll have a very good package by the time they come back. and they can start debating and voting on it then. So I really don't think for the extra little time it matters.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average now down just 6 points, the S&P 500 off 10, the Nasdaq down 53. I'm Ann Cates.
Sometimes, traffic keeps us trapped in our vehicles for longer than we'd like. It's hard to be stuck in the car for an hour, much less for weeks at a time. But sadly, many families right here in our community call their cars home. Wouldn't it be nice to help them find an apartment, or a bed, or even a shower? Well, you can by giving to the Salvation Army, where every donation fights for good. Visit GiveWestwood.org now to help fund housing assistance initiatives for our neighbors most in need.
You'll do it right to get an outdoor space you love. Lowe's is here to help and help you save. Add a new patio or walkway and get square patio stones, now 10 for $10. Freshen up your deck with Valspar exterior stain and sealant starting at just $36.98. And for one day only, August 10th, all new and existing Lowe's credit card holders get 10% off purchases made with your Lowe's card. Do it right for less. Start with Lowe's. Stone offer valid through 8/14. Excludes Alaska and Hawaii. Credit offer subject to credit approval and can't be combined with other credit offers. Exclusions apply. U.S. only.
If you can get a signal on your smartphone, then you can listen live to Money Radio. Download our app for free and never miss a moment of the great advice.
Financial words of wisdom with Market Wrap host Mo Ansari.
There should be a little sign like this on the side of cigarette packets. Picking tops and bottoms can be hazardous to your wealth. Don't try to do it.
It's helpful financial food for thought on your drive home with a host who tells it like it is. Market Wrap with Mo Ansari.
Catch Market Wrap on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3 FM Monday through Friday at 5 p.m.
Hey everybody, Mark Asher, back with my friends from the Lund Mortgage Team. If you're in the market for a new home or have been thinking about refinancing your current home, the first call you have to make is to the Lund Mortgage Team. They're family owned and operated right here in the state of Arizona. In fact, they're celebrating their 20th year in existence this year. They've helped thousands of people save thousands of dollars on their home loans, and you could be next. And now might actually be a really good time to work with the Lund Mortgage Team. Here's my good friend Lisa Lund, owner of the Lund Mortgage Team, to tell us a little more. Lisa, it seems like this is the lowest we've seen these rates in at least the last few years. Am I right?
Yes, Mark, it is. We really haven't seen rates this low in years. Obviously, we aren't sure how long these great rates will be around, so feel free to give us a call. We can do the homework for you to see if it makes sense to refinance your current home, or maybe now is the time to make that move to the home of your dreams.
Thanks, Lisa. Call today, 623-875-9940, 623-875-9940, or go online, lundmortgageteam.com.
Welcome to Arrowhead BMW. Welcome to luxury. Here we strive to excel at the art of hospitality. We're more than just vehicles on a lot. Let us be your hosts for a premium and transparent shopping experience designed to respect and value your time. Featuring a luxurious showroom, exquisite customer lounges, and a state-of-the-art service department with employees skilled in customer excellence. Arrowhead BMW, the ultimate luxury experience.
Looking to buy a nice home and can't find one? Go to OurNiceHomes.com. Check out homes before they hit the market at OurNiceHomes.com or call 480-776-5231.
Jim Chesko with Your Money Now. Stocks remain lower here in the final hour of trading, but they have erased much of the day's losses. Right now, the Dow Industrials are down just 8 points. The Nasdaq still lower by 57. The S&P 500 is down 11. Oil futures jumped for a second straight session, but they did still finish down for the week. Today, September crude rallied 3.7% to settle at $54.50 a barrel. A change of plans at ESPN. It was supposed to this weekend to broadcast highlights from a recent esports competition in which players competed at the shooter video game Apex Legends from Electronic Arts. Disney's ESPN now says it will hold off on airing the program until October out of respect for the victims of last weekend's El Paso, Texas and Dayton, Ohio shootings. The competition took place last weekend at a stadium in Minneapolis. Shares of Dropbox are, dropping. They're down 14% after the file storage company delivered a mixed earnings report. Paid user ads easily topped expectations, but revenue per user fell short. That's Your Money Now.
I'm Nick Soboleski, a Select Quote agent with a true story that could save you hundreds of dollars a year. A woman named Linda just called. Her husband, Ray, has a $300,000 group life insurance policy, but is changing jobs and can't take it with him. Well, I shopped the many highly rated term life insurance companies we represent, like Prudential and Mutual of Omaha, and found Ray, who is 41 and takes medication to control his cholesterol, a 10-year, $500,000 policy for under $27 a month. That's almost twice the coverage for less than half of what he had paid. If SelectQuote hasn't shopped for your life insurance, you're probably paying too much.
For your free quote, call 800-507-2266. That's 800-507-2266. 800-507-2266. Or go to SelectQuote.com. Since 1985, we shop, you save.
Get full details on the example policy at SelectQuote.com/commercials. Or price could vary depending on your health, issuing company, and other factors. Not available in all states.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. And we are in our second half. And if you're just tuning in, I've got Dr. Alicia Mangrum here in the studio. She's a trauma surgeon and founder and CEO of G60 Trauma. I've also got Delvin Grewal in, and she is the behavioral health therapist and chief operating officer for G60 Trauma. And I got Scott Fischer. And we also were brought in with some more NFL music. You know, it's hard to believe it's August 9th, and we're already talking about NFL football. And us folks here in Arizona, we've just been too disappointed over the years that we are holding out hope that this is the year.
Oh, yeah. That music reminds me back in the day when we would watch the NFL highlights every weekend with Pat Summerall, and he would go through all that with us, and you'd hear that music.
Oh, it was NFL Films, and it was Steve Sable.
Steve Sable, yes.
Yeah. And they would play that music with all the horns and the brass, and it just sounded so... It was like gladiator type, right? It was really cool, really cool. So, speaking of gladiator types, we have got a gladiator here in Dr. Mangram, and you know the stuff that you see every day and you've seen in your career is nothing short of just. There's no words for it. I mean, when you see these traumas come in, you know, just when you think you've seen it all, you see something new. And you know, for me, being in the senior care space and really hosting this show. The work that you're doing right now is phenomenal and really, you know, Humpty Dumpty, putting people back together again. But more so than that, you know, the stuff that we're talking about in terms of helping older adults. And, you know, Delvin, we were talking about the social determinants that we're running into and the fact that 1/3 of our population, 65 and older today across the country, lives home alone.
Right.
You know, you do a lot of work in terms of making sure that we can safely discharge somebody from an acute setting like a trauma center in a hospital back to their home. There's a lot that goes into that, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. And then I'd like to, ready for this? Punt it over to you, Alicia, and really talk about a little bit more about
a wide receiver.
All right, well, I'll throw the ball over to you, okay. And I'd like you to talk a little bit more about the electronic caregiver and what you're doing with this study within the 4 trauma units that we were talking about earlier.
Okay, so I'll start. So a lot of patients, when they go home and they have no caregiver, they live alone, I think one of the biggest concerns they have is, what if I have another fall? What if this time no one is able to get to me? So they have all these concerns, and one of the biggest things, if they've had a fall in the home and they go back to their home, I think it's just human nature to some degree that we make a conscious effort to auto-correct ourselves, or a conscious effort to be even more careful, and that's when sometimes we tend to make more mistakes than we should. You have the standard, if you go on Google, you know, all the standard precautions to prevent falls at home, you know, how to make your home safe and everything. And then you have, you know, side effects of medications that your doctors will educate you. But there's always that concern that a lot of people do not quite address, which is the trauma side of it, the psychological side of it. where they've had a fall, they've experienced what it's like, and they know they're going to be at risk of another fall, greater risk of another fall. What's going to happen if that happens? A lot of them in this country, they have children residing in different states. Children calling them, all concerned. I don't think you should be staying alone. I think you should go and live in a senior living facility. What we want is for our patients to be able to go home, feel confident, and live and continue living in their comfort zone, in their home. And if that means, bringing in resources like electronic caregiver that Dr. Mangram is going to touch a little more on, to give them that comfort, that sense of security, knowing that if something happens at home, that they will get the help they need in a timely manner, that makes a lot of difference.
You're talking about the individuals themselves.
Yes.
But I would imagine for those family members, it's peace of mind for them too.
Exactly.
Especially when we know that the average distance of an adult child to a parent today is about 280 miles. Yeah. The old days of the nuclear family being together and one caring for one another doesn't exist, especially in a market like ours where so many people have moved here because they wanted a better climate, they wanted a better life, but their children have pursued or stayed back in their home. So it's really nice to have that security, that knowledge to know that somebody's there in case.
I think that peace of mind is what everyone is looking for. If you're a child and I'll speak for myself. My parents live in the other side of the world. And if something happens, it takes me minimum 24 hours to get to them.
Wow.
So, just knowing that there is resources available, that they will be able, knowing that they'll be attended to in a very timely, fashionable manner. I think that's just a peace of mind for any child to know that, I will still be able to get to my parents, but till then, I know they're going to be okay.
Yep, and knowing that we have technology today.
Yes.
That you can get that information real time. I mean, you can know when an event happens, and then you can intervene. Absolutely. I had a really good friend of mine. He's still a friend of mine, but unfortunately, he's not the same. Right. He stroked.
Yes.
And he lost his wife literally less than 3 months earlier. And he stroked and wasn't discovered till about 12 hours after the fact. And, the sad thing is that we come into this world alone and we leave alone.
Right.
And I hate to be cliche-ish, but it really is about the journey. And, we talk about social isolation. We talk about people living alone. But, we are human beings and we are meant to be social. We are meant to interact and be together. Right. And if we can't be together with a partner of any sort, then we need to use innovation and technology. Now, it sounds like that's what you're doing, Alicia. So tell us a little bit more about this G60 initiative that you got going.
Yeah, no, and that's what's exciting. I really love the way you said that. It wasn't cliche. That's just the truth. It's where two people gather together, there's strength. And
right.
And so we're not meant to be alone, but we come into the world alone and we'll go out alone. And what excited me, and I think excited our group, when we started having conversations with Tony Durham, who's the CEO of the Electronic Caregiver, is sort of his vision for the product. I mean, he doesn't need to partner with G60 Trauma. He can just go sell your product like every other person who has, remote patient monitoring, et cetera, et cetera. But what's exciting is the reason we're partnered to do a study is we're not just looking at the caregiver, at the care recipient. We're looking at the caregiver. And so he has different products, but one of his products, Pro Health, can monitor the patient's blood pressure, O2 sats, their weight, their glucose, etc., which and a lot of companies do that. You probably have a blood pressure cuff at home now to monitor your blood pressure. But what does that mean? Okay, so I can check my glucose every day. I'm a diabetic. But how do we get that information to the right people? How do we pay attention to it? So in addition to the things that Pro Health can monitor, it can go up into a cloud and it can get to the primary care physicians. In addition to that, There's that monitoring, to know exactly where the person is. If they've fallen, they can hit a button, and there's some 24 hours a day. Somebody can be there to help them. They have Pocket MD, so hopefully decrease the time they go back and forth to the ER. And what we're looking at, so our study, we're just now sent off the IRB approval for...
What's IRB mean?
International Review Board.
Thank you. We throw a lot of acronyms in healthcare.
Yeah, it's really Internal Review Board. My mind must be on international.
There you go.
But they just protect us, and it protects the public when you're doing studies.
Right.
So we sent that off to the IRB, and the pilot study is just the start of the big study that we're doing. And our goals are to look at, number one, the primary goal, look at can we decrease readmission? Because the patients that we're recruiting have already been involved they've been in the hospital in the acute care setting. And then the secondary goals, is the patient satisfied with the equipment? The other secondary goal is caregiver satisfaction, and decreasing caregiver stress. Because if you're the one having to care for the patient who just got released from the hospital, that's a lot of work too. And instead of, this caregiver having to say, hey, it's time to take your medicine, it's time to do this, it's time to do that, let's look and see if the ECG products can decrease their stress. So it's not just the patient, it's the caregiver. And Addison, which is the third component, so there's ProHealth, which we'll be using. Addison will be a component where there's this real virtual electronic caregiver. So she pops up and says, hey, Bob, did you take your medicine today? It's 2:00. Or, hey, I noticed you're walking, your gait is off. And so we're hoping that by doing a huge study, maybe we can take this to Capitol Hill, take it to the government and say Medicare and Medicaid maybe should reimburse patients with this. Like you said, in politics, nobody's talking about this huge epidemic.
It's not sexy.
It's not.
Aging, we're all doing it, but nobody's talking about it. In Washington, we always wait for it to be a crisis.
Right.
And they don't want to address it until it becomes a crisis.
Right.
Can you believe we're down 3 segments?
Oh, my goodness.
Wait, you know what? I want our listeners to stick around the 4th segment. I'm going to say right now, this is going to be the best of them all. So stick around. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I got Dr. Alicia Mangrum. She is the founder, trauma surgeon and CEO of G60 Trauma. And I've also got Delvin Grewal in, and she's the behavioral health therapist, COO, and of G60 Trauma, and Scott Fischer, who's kind of been riding shotgun with me, and maybe we'll hear a little more from Scott in the last segment. Little Jethro Tull taking us out. Thank you, Wes. Stick around. You listen to Health Futures. We'll be right back.
Having fun. Are you sick and tired of hearing, don't buy an annuity until you've spoken to the so-called experts? If so, call 800-957-5604, extension 200, to learn the concept of a principal-protected, low-cost, new generation annuity and the various options. Listen to Secured Financial Solutions every Monday and Thursday at 1 p.m. on this station to prevent a derailed retirement and from purchasing the wrong annuity, especially the high-risk, high-fee variable annuity and complex proprietary index annuities. Secured Financial Solutions will help you understand the difference between true stated guarantees and non-guaranteed returns. Call 800-957-5604, extension 200, and visit dreamretire.com.
Investment advisory services offered through Virtue Capital Management, LLC, VCM, and Registered Investment Advisor. VCM and Secured Financial Solutions, LLC are independent of each other. Annuities are insurance products, backed by the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the insuring insurance company. Information provided is not intended as tax or legal advice and should not be relied on as such. You are encouraged to seek tax or legal advice from an independent professional.
This Wednesday is the return from summer break. The JoeLoans.com show on Money Radio at 1:30. With the rate cut by the Fed and the turmoil in the markets, how does that affect your plans for a new home loan or a refinancing of an existing home mortgage? Joe Capitano, Senior Vice President with Homeowners Financial Group, will help give clarity to these questions and more. Tune in to Money Radio this Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. for the JoeLoans.com show with Joe Capitano.
The following update is for drivers who pay too much for car insurance due to DUIs, DWIs, tickets, or anything else. Our company specializes in low-cost SR22 auto insurance. We know that mistakes happen and offer free quotes for very affordable auto insurance meant specifically for you, the overpaying high-risk driver. The The quote is free, and we'll handle the filing so you can start saving money. Call 800-749-2984. 800-749-2984. 800-749-2984.
At Farmers Insurance, the more you know, the better you can plan for what's ahead. Get smarter about your insurance at farmers.com. That's farmers.com.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, I've got Dr. Alicia Mangrum in the studio from G60. I got Delvin Grewal as well, and Scott Fischer, and we are working for the weekend. A little lover boy bringing us in. Cowbell Friday. We gotta love it. I don't know, Dr. Mangram, are you going back to work, or are you going home after this?
I'd love to say I'm going home after this, but Delvin told me I have one more meeting, and then I'm going home.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So, here it is. This is the crescendo. This is really the end of our show. And, I've really loved having you here on the show. And, I think one of the things that you are wanting to do more than anything is really bring awareness to what you're doing. And you are a not-for-profit, right?
We are.
And how do you get your funds to do what you do? And I'm putting you on the spot. This is a shameless plug from me. You didn't ask me to do this, but how do you do all this?
Well, I do a lot of hard work, a lot of volunteer work. So that's number one. To get it going, we had a lot of volunteers. We've had some fundraisers with the help of Honor Health, with the help of Abrazo, with the help of a lot of private physicians. They've helped. The electronic caregiver, they've helped. They've been tremendous, especially understanding that we want to do research and want to do studies. And instead of just wanting us to use their product, they've actually stepped up in a very major way and said, I want to do studies. I want to change the way government looks at post-care. And now we're really looking at our post-transitional care program. It's going to be G60 post-transitional care, where we really help the patients more than just in the hospital and worry about readmission. What do we do with them when the patient goes home, especially that first 30, 60, 90 days? They don't know who to call. They don't know how many different appointments they have. They have their PCP. They have to go back to ortho. They have to go back and see their trauma surgeons. How do we take G60 to the next level? So in my mind, I've been asked, what's next? Delvin says, what's next? What do we do next? And I think next is that post-transition of care, in addition to continuing to improve the care that we provide in the hospital.
No, I think that's so important. I love the fact that you are getting and putting together data. I mean, the big buzzword that we use in healthcare is evidence-based information.
Absolutely.
And we have to be able to support what we're doing. And certainly in Tony Dorman's case, he wants to substantiate that he's got a pilot that's running with G60 and being able to substantiate the fact that we can get people from an acute setting back home safely and be able to live out their lives as successfully as they could.
Yes, definitely.
No, that is awesome. I love that. And the other part that you're doing is you're doing a lot of education. And education's a big part of who you are, is it not?
No, absolutely. That's really the premise. Is if we educate people, then we can make changes. Don't quote me, but I've probably been at least to 10 different states giving G60 presentations. I put on about 4 or 5 years a G60 trauma conference, a 2-day conference, and we had people from all over the United States come. I want to put on another conference. We're in the early thought meetings of creating a course where hospitals can actually have G60 come out and put on a course for the hospital that would help benefit the nurses, the physicians, the trauma surgeons, the OR, pharmacists involved, all the things that we can do to educate. So that's one of, and then of course if we have great results from the ProHealth and home care and using technology, artificial intelligence, and then if the data is very positive, which I can't imagine it won't be, I'd rather have artificial intelligence in my house reminding me to take my medicine. And the last component is ECG is working on Addison being able to do rehab in the home, being able to do certain moves, certain exercises with the patient, because they don't have a car to go do outpatient rehab, or their insurance will only pay for one inpatient, coming into their home visit. So there's a lot we can do, and yes, education.
I can't help but think when I saw Addison Care, it's really slick. I don't know if you've seen it, Scott, but it's a virtual caregiver. I can't help but think of growing up seeing that movie A Space Odyssey and Hal. When you went from one room to the next, Hal would be following you. That's exactly what Addison does.
That's exactly right.
I can't help to think how that would be a benefit to senior living providers, the folks that I do work with and refer to. There's a couple hundred people living in a building, and there might be 6 or 8 caregivers at a given time. They can't see and be with everyone. So to utilize technology to keep people safer and to monitor their health just makes tons of sense as we enter in the season of the shortage of caregivers and the lack of help that's available.
And interesting too is you talk about awareness and prevention. We talked about at the top of the show about falls, and I've heard some crazy statistics, like 75% of the ER visits and urgent care visits are related to falls with 65-year-olds and older. Prevention is so important, and it's not only just making the house safe. So you're picking up throw rugs, you're picking up those corner tables that have sharp edges, but you're also making sure that the medications that they're taking don't have interactions where it may lead to dizziness and maybe passing out. The other part is alcohol. We've talked about it here on the show, and we have a lot of older adults that are drinking a lot of alcohol, and alcoholism is a big problem that isn't really talked about in the interaction of alcohol with medications.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the, all trauma centers, we have to do injury prevention. And we've done really a good job with seat belts and motorcycle helmets, maybe not so much in Arizona, but, kids wearing their helmets. And one of the big things that we do as a trauma center is we do alcohol screening, all right? And so we screen everybody that comes in, and then what we're charged to do is a brief intervention. So we do alcohol screening, brief interventions. And so even in our G60 population, and so you're absolutely right, what we found is that our G60 populations, they're at even higher risk of having complications from alcohol withdrawal than our younger patients. Because the younger patients, if they've come in and their alcohol level is high, they were probably at a party or home from college, versus if a 70-year-old comes in and their alcohol level's high, they've been drinking for 40 years. They've not been drinking. So another issue.
But the thing, too, is metabolizing.
Absolutely.
Older adults metabolize a lot different than we do, and different than our children do.
Absolutely.
So we're getting ready to wrap it up. And Dr. Mangram, I'm going to give you the last word. I want to ask you, what is it that keeps you up at night? And what message can you deliver to our audience as we close out our show?
Well, I want to tell you thank you. But my message would be that this elderly population is going to continue to grow, and we need to continue to try to find ways to be prepared to take care of the older adult patients.
I love what you guys are doing at G60 Trauma. Go to g60trauma.org or call 602-540-1137. Thank you. Thank you, Delvin. Thank you, Scott. We're out.
Financial Words of Wisdom with Market Wrap host Mo Ansari.
Staying out of the market is the most dangerous thing you can do for your financial future. If you continue to spend like a drunken sailor, you're going to run out of money. That's the reality. This is not poker. This is your financial future.
It's helpful financial food for thought on your drive home with a host who tells it like it is. Market Wrap with Mo Ansari.
Catch Market Wrap on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3 Monday through Friday at 5 p.m.
Money Radio 1510
and 105.3 FM.
KFNN Mesa, Phoenix, and K287BX Mesa. No matter what the temperature, it's always cool to be in total charge of our finances. Money Radio will tell you how. Take a look at the market. Dow down 92 points, 26,285. S&P down 19 at 2918, and NASDAQ down 79 points at 7959.
When people want to talk about money, this is the place they come to. And there's more on the way after this break for the latest news. And we begin